Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Real Estate Realities with the Rebel Broker. My name is Robert Whitelaw, and I am the Rebel Broker, licensed real estate broker in the state of California, member of the National Association of Realtors. But please don't hold that against me. Welcome to it, folks. It has been super busy. I mean, just as sort of an anecdotal looking back over the shoulder thing, I've seen a big uptick in the number of folks looking for a home. Not as much of an uptick in the number of folks looking to list their homes for sale. I've had a few requests for home valuations, but basically it's been flat. It has been relatively flat now for months and months, not a big uptick. And if we're talking about the different seasonal changes that tend to happen, we would have expected a big uptick in December, January, February that I really didn't see. And again, anecdotally, in terms of the number of homes that are listing in the communities that we follow, we've seen some increases when compared to previous months, but obviously the year-over-year change has been a decrease. But I have seen an uptick in the number of folks looking to buy. So we'll see how that plans out. All that can do, though, is really put more pressure on demand. And right now, we already have very low inventory, and it'll be interesting to see if that pushes things over. We talked about this in the last market analysis I did, I believe, for Santa Clara County, that you can find on my site at soldbyrobert.com or on my YouTube channel. But more buyers is simply going to increase competition without a lot of inventory added. So it might push things back over to lean more towards a buyer's market. And the reason why I say that is because of the months of inventory numbers that we have. Again, if you look at my most recent market analysis, we have less than 3 months worth of inventory in hand. So if the demand just goes up a little, we suddenly find ourselves in that situation where buyers are now pushing up prices because of the low inventory and increased demand. So we'll see how that goes. I mention it because it's something I'm seeing evolve in my own anecdotal day-to-day experience. We'll see if that translates into a whole bunch more offers, but there's no way to know for sure until we actually start to see some data that indicates those folks that are starting their shopping experience are actually making offers on properties. Okay, so that's a little something. That's a little intro moment, a little off, just something I was realizing over the last few days as I was looking at other data. Now, as I've mentioned before, I'm a real estate broker right here in California. I serve Southern Silicon Valley. I focus mostly on the South County from San Jose down to Gilroy, but I also serve the outlying areas. If you're interested in finding out more about what your home might sell for in today's market, or if you'd like to start your search for the perfect home, please visit my site at soldbyrobert.com, where I have plenty of tools available to start that search or to get going with your competitive market analysis on your home. But today what I want to talk about, and this is a subject we've covered over the years, just because it's constantly coming up. California HFA, the California Housing Finance Agency, has an interesting program that they've introduced, and I want to thank Scott Blasius. He is one of my longtime listeners from Sacramento. He's a great real estate agent up there. If you ever want to talk to someone about buying a home or selling a home in the Sacramento area, you could do a lot worse than talking to Scott. He's a good guy, and his heart's in the right place when it comes to where he sees his duties to be. But he kind of turned me on to this. It's something that I think I shared via Twitter or maybe Facebook, but I hadn't really looked into it. But let's lay the groundwork a little bit here. Most of these programs that are offering paths for folks in lower income brackets to purchase homes without having to put any money down, I know they feel like you're really helping someone, but you're only helping someone as long as that market continues to grow, as long as those values continue to go up. And particularly when it's not linked to any sort of education on financial management, right? The reason I mention this, and I realize this is a minority opinion, and I know I upset people sometimes when I say this, but you are not doing anyone a favor by circumventing normal financing requirements for folks that are low income or a member of some group that is you to believe is in need of your help. And the reason for that is that back in the late 2000s, right? 2007, 8, 9, when we were having so many homes upside down, So many of the folks that were in the deepest trouble were the ones who had been offered these programs. And when you talk about predatory lending, right, they always talk about the banks. They never talk about the programs that in reality prey on low-income people who don't have the money to put down, who don't have the income requirements, all these sorts of things that put them in debt to a level they simply cannot manage, whether it's because they don't make enough to potentially manage a downside, or it makes them immediately upside down and with no equity because they have entered into something where they have no money in it. They haven't bought down the value of the home enough to create a buffer so that if the market goes down just a little, and we talked about this before, right? Back in the olden days when things went nuts last time, you could get 110% loans on a signature. And so you were immediately underwater. You had some cash, but your home was immediately worth less than what you paid for it. Now, that tends to be true the day after escrow closes today, right? Because you buy a home and frequently there are other things going on, or depending on how much of a loan you got. But frequently you'll find that you can't, because if you wanted to sell it again, you'd have to pay a commission, right? There'd be 6%, there'd be 1%. You'd end up paying 1.2% probably in terms of escrow fees and all these other types of things. So in reality, you tend to be upside down if you are someone who's put no money down or has a very low down payment on your property. If you've got that 20% down payment, sure, you've got equity in there. But let's talk about this for a minute. Let's discuss sort of the lay of the land on this one. Now, the California, I'm actually at the website for California Housing Finance Agency, and I want to get into this because at first blush, it sounds like they may be doing some things that are okay. The Dream for All Shared Appreciation Loan is a down payment assistance program for first-time home buyers to be used in conjunction with the Dream for All conventional first mortgage for down payment and/or closing costs. Upon sale or transfer of the home buyer repays the original down payment loan plus a share of the appreciation in the value of the home. All right, so not only are you paying back the loan, but you're also paying back a share of the appreciation. So that's an important thing to note right away. But also note that as we look through this, if the home goes down in value while you end up not paying anything because there's no appreciation, there's no additional assistance. If this goes down, it's all on you. So be aware of that. And in a time when we are concerned that home values are going to drop, and there are an awful lot of super smart folks telling us that home values are going to go down, including people who were right last time, like Peter Schiff, I think it is worth being concerned about extending these kinds of programs to folks where if they buy into this and home values go down, they are absolutely hosed. And particularly when they start doing the math like they did in the late 2000s, where they realize I'm paying a mortgage at X level. I could buy another home right now where my mortgage would be cut by 15%, 10%, whatever that number might be. So, why even continue to make this payment? Or I could go and I could rent a place and my cash flow is better. So it's definitely not in my estimation, you are not being charitable. You're not being kind in the most part for these kinds of things that go out that are intended to help people. I think in the long run, you're actually not helping people. Now, will some people benefit? Absolutely. But I think there's a huge chunk that won't, and I think that's a concern. So program eligibility. Let's talk about what the requirements are. First, be a first-time home buyer. Okay, well, what is a first-time home buyer? That sounds like a really basic thing that we should all understand. Well, no, you're not a one-time home buyer. You are a first-time home buyer, even if you've bought a home before. As long as you sold that home more than 3 years ago and you haven't bought a home since, you're now a brand new, shiny new home buyer. So this is not just aimed at those folks trying to get their first home. This is aimed at anyone who's that, but also someone who hasn't owned a home in 3 years. So I think that's monumentally bad. If you can contain the scope to a certain set of folks in terms of at least only hitting up first-time home buyers, at least you're limiting the crater you might create for these folks. But that's not what they're doing in this case. If you actually look at this, where did I find this? Borrower requirements. Here we go. To know for sure, you should understand that a first-time home buyer is defined as someone who has not owned and occupied their own home in the last 3 years. Just so we're clear. Right there. So no, I'm not making this up. That is what the actual site tells us is a new home buyer. So you should always be a little suspicious when anything redefines a term that seems really super understandable to you. If someone says something is blue, and then you look at it and it's green, well, we're redefining what blue means, and that's not going to help anybody. So first-time home buyer isn't really a first-time home buyer. Occupy the property as a primary residence. Non-occupant co-borrowers are not allowed. All right. CalHFA borrowers must complete 2 levels of homebuyer education counseling and obtain a certificate of completion through an eligible homebuyer counseling program. That sounds great, right? In my head, of course, my bias is I'm thinking, well, these are the things I would teach someone who is doing 2 things, buying a home and buying a home in a way that this has you buying a home. So let's go ahead and take a moment and review what is on the list. Now, if you want to Google this for yourself, good luck. This document, this website does not have any links to any of what the actual curriculum is. It does have some links to providers of the training, and I managed to find one site that lists what is covered. If this training covered what was really super relevant, I have a feeling that curriculum would be right here. There would be a link leading right to it. So let's look at the only source I found that gave any sort of a breakdown. Topics covered. Take a look at that and tell me if you think any of that creates any sort of financial insight or discipline or understanding budgeting. This is a list of stuff that I suppose is good to have on there, but not what I would put in the top 10 things to learn when you're having someone purchase a home like this. Step number 1, steps to successful home ownership. Not sure what that defines, but because of the broadness and depth of the importance of financial knowledge, I have a feeling that would have its own heading. So I'm guessing that is not covered in steps to successful home ownership. How to recognize predatory lending. Okay, well, before we ever even get to lending, these folks should be getting talked about how to understand and manage their own finances. Next, your credit and why it's important. How to choose the best loan, what happens at closing, how to think like a lender, qualifying for a mortgage, protecting your home investment, steps to take if not able to make your mortgage payment. So that's it. Topics covered in the home buyer home ownership education courses. And this literally was the only thing I could find that breaks down what is taught. Now, maybe someone else is a much better Googler than I am. And I only invested maybe 30 minutes to an hour in poking this with a stick. But that's quite a bit less than what I would want from a program that is basically paying for these folks' down payments. And remember where these folks are at. As soon as they buy this home, they immediately are underwater, right? They do not have equity in this house, and they owe the state money. The shared appreciation, and I wanted to go through this a little bit because it gives some examples. Now, the first one, let's see here. Just so I can get it all in there so you all can see it. 80% to 150% AMI. So in this example, they get a first mortgage for $400 plus a DFA loan of $100,000 for a home value of $500,000. Assuming the home goes up to $640,000, home appreciation is $140,000. The homeowner share of the appreciation is $112,000. The DFA share of appreciation is $28,000. Homeowner sells the home, first mortgage balance, plus the DFA loan payback, plus the homeowner's equity, $128,000, DFA principal, DFA shared appreciation. So they get their $100,000 back, plus they get a chunk of the appreciation. I don't fundamentally have a problem with that at all. And then next, homeowner equity, $142,000. So this is all great as long as the home goes up in value. CalHFA income borrowers are those borrowers earning between 80 of the area median income. That's what that is. But take a look at this, 80 to 150% of the area median income. So this is not even just aimed at folks who make below the median. This is aimed at folks who make 150% of the median. So this is far more broad than helping a disadvantaged community, because people making 150% of the area median income, I don't think would be categorized as being disadvantaged, right? I mean, a huge number of the folks I deal with regularly who are buying conventionally make 150% of the average income here in the communities that I serve. Okay. Next, example 2, 80% of AMI or under. Now, this is absolutely aimed at folks who are below the median. Same circumstances, $400,000 loan, $100,000 loan from the state, from California, for a $500,000 purchase. And CalHFA only shares in 15%. So notice this is a lower percentage of the overall, right? Before, I think it was 20%. This time it's 15%. So they get a $21,000 or $21,000 boost out of that for the 15%. Homeowner sells the home. First mortgage balance is $370. DFA loan payback $121. Homeowner equity $149. Home sold for $640. And again, all of this assumes that there is appreciation. Now, a lot of folks will argue, well, everything appreciates, Robert, right? Well, yes, but it depends on the timeline. If you go back to 2010, 2011, 2012, everyone still has to live month to month. They have to buy food, they have to buy fuel for their car, and they still have to stay employed. We're at a point where employment is likely to take a hit, at least locally. We're seeing an awful lot of layoffs happening in high tech, and that feeds a lot of other businesses that will likely see layoffs as well. We have ridiculous inflation, so day-to-day costs are much higher than normal, or much higher than most folks are used to. And we've seen costs rise at a level that just dwarfs income. So despite the fact you got a 4% raise last year, and I don't know how many of you got a 4% raise, probably not a lot of you. Probably if you work in the corporate environment, you probably got from a 2 to 3.5% raise. Well, you still got a pay cut. You got a pay cut of about 3%, because inflation is way beyond what you're getting your pay increased by. So as we continue to live in that world where everything you buy costs you more, but you are not making that much more, challenges to your month to month become more realistic. And of course, for the folks who are at only 80% of the local median income, those challenges are even higher. These are places that probably don't even enjoy pay increases on the level that a lot of folks who are at the median are enjoying. So you've got these folks who are disadvantaged, and you are financing their purchase of a home. You are facilitating a huge debt for them that is not guaranteed to appreciate. And I think that's the part that's crazy. And you're doing it in a way where you're requiring educational elements that really are not preparing them to manage their debt, to manage their income, to budget appropriately. You're giving them all of these types of required trainings that really don't feed any of that. In fact, the ones we talked about here, how long-term is this training? Recognizing predatory lending is only relevant when you're looking for your loan. Your credit, well, that's always relevant, but it's only really relevant when you're trying to get a loan. How to choose the best loan, again, only at the time of the loan. What happens at closing? Nice that we can see the state doesn't know how to spell the word happens. Closing happens once. How to think like a lender. Great. Okay, thinking like a lender in terms of, I'm assuming, what they're looking at when they're approving a loan or not approving a loan. Again, that's a slice of time in your life. Qualifying for a mortgage. Again, slice of time in your life. Protecting your home investment. Okay, that one has legs, right? That'll last a long time, assuming they're covering the right things. Steps to take if not able to make your mortgage payment. I love that they have part of this course being, we have so ill prepared you for this gift we're going to give you that we're going to train you on how to default on this stuff. So of all of these things, there's maybe one or two things that are lifestyle affecting. I want to see things that teach you the importance of financial management, of projecting what's going to cost what, having a budget, These are all things that are going to make you successful as a borrower of a huge pile of money to buy a house. Because if it goes like it did last time, and one reason why I'm so passionate about this is there was nothing sadder than trying to work through the process with folks back in 2008, 9, 10, and 11 who were simply hosed by this amount of debt that they had taken on, that the market had now it completely eliminated any equity they had in the property. And they now had to do, negotiations with banks to try to get the home sold for below what they owed. They were upside down. It was terrible. And many times they had to declare bankruptcy. This is not preventing any of it. And in fact, given where we're going, has a huge probability of making it a whole lot worse for a whole lot more people. So what's the takeaway from this? Well, if you are someone who has self-taught yourself the budgeting life and you understand your finances, I'm not going to say don't take advantage of this. This is free money, but remember, you're giving up a huge chunk of your equity to get this. But if you are someone who wants to buy and you want to take advantage of this and you fall into one of these two categories, either 80% or less of median or 80 to 150% of median, and you're willing to cough up, what was it? Was it 20% or was it 25%? Where's the number? I think it was 20%. Yeah. If you're willing to cough up that much of the equity that you're going to get, and that's a good chunk of money, then go for it. And if it's your only option, I suppose, go for it. But please take the time to educate yourself, if you haven't already, on how to manage your finances, to decide ahead of time before you sign any paperwork on whether or not this actually makes sense for you. And as Scott said, it seems like a bad call. I tend to agree with Scott. And I wish that if they're going to do this, instead of focusing on making the people giving out the money feel better through some sort of thing they feel like they're doing for people, if they really, what I want them to do is to give these folks the skills they need, that they never need to talk to these folks. Go in, give them the knowledge they need, that they don't need someone to come along and say, hey, for 20 or 25% of your appreciation, we'll give you this money. No, just give them the skills to do it themselves. Put the power in their hands. Don't take some of that power for yourself. And as a flip side to this, the greatest way to build your own equity and to improve your finances is through purchasing real estate, if you do it correctly and do it at the appropriate time in your financial life. Don't accelerate a process when you're not ready to jump in. And unfortunately, this is potentially going to accelerate folks and get them excited about this process, but set themselves up for a big disappointment that may come relatively quickly, particularly with what we've seen. Remember, we haven't really hit recession yet. We've been fighting inflation with increased interest rates. We're still seeing crazy inflation, but at some point they're going to reduce those interest rates to fight recession. And all the things that are happening now with various companies firing and laying off, that feeds recession, right? So just keep all these things in mind. There are an awful lot of financial balls in the air right now. And at a time where there are recession and inflation risks, I don't think this is a good call for an awful lot of borrowers, but I think some folks are going to be tempted by this. What the first class you should be teaching here is, does it really make financial sense for you to engage in following up on this Dream for All shared appreciation loan? Is it a good idea? Give them the skills to make the decision. Don't just throw it out there. All right, folks, I thought I'd put that out there. I'd love to hear your comments on it. Am I way off base? Feel free to comment below if you are checking this out on YouTube. If you're listening to the podcast, head on over to soldbyrobert.com. You can check the post there and add a comment or email me directly through the site at soldbyrobert.com. I'd love to hear from you and get your thoughts on this. I'd love also to hear from people who've taken advantage of these programs in the past. I have several clients from the past who had taken advantage of some of these programs who just had dismal results when the things turned south in terms of home prices. All right, folks, thanks again for listening. I do truly appreciate you spending your valuable time with me. The goal, as always, is to leave more value on the table than I take up in your time, and I absolutely hope we've achieved that this week. Thanks again for listening, and I'll talk to you all next time.